I'm David Brown. I'm the chair of the INNS College of Fellows and the leader of the History Project. Our interviewee today is Dr. Andrew Barto. Andrew began undergraduate studies in 1966 at the University of Michigan, majoring in naval architecture and marine engineering. Finding that he was more interested in mathematics than in ships, he switched majors to study mathematics, receiving a BS with distinction in mathematics in 1970. Along the way, he happened upon the 1943 McCullough and Pitts paper showing how it was possible to use mathematics to study the brain. Inspired by this possibility, Barto entered Michigan's graduate program in computer and communication science. CSSS was a unique program that emphasized multidisciplinary investigation of both natural and artificial systems. Aside from courses on automata theory and mathematical system theory, required courses included introductions to cognitive science, neurophysiology, population genetics, and even immunology. Barto's Ph.D. dissertation was about using cellular automata to model natural systems. In 1977, Barto joined the Computer and Information Science Department at the University of Massachusetts Amherst as a postdoc to work on a project assessing the scientific merit of the hedonistic neuron, a hypothesis proposed by the physiologist A. Harry Clough. Richard Sutton shortly joined the team as a graduate student, and Barto and Sutton's work on the project formed the basis of the current reinforcement learning branch of machine learning. Barto became a UMass faculty member in 1982, served as department chair from 2007 to 2011, and retired in 2012. Throughout his years as a professor, Barto directed or co-directed a research laboratory that produced many notable machine learning researchers. Barto has received a number of awards: the 2004 IEEE Neural Network Society Pioneer Award for contributions to the field of reinforcement learning, the IJCAI 17 Award for Research Excellence for groundbreaking and impactful research in both the theory and application of reinforcement learning, and the University of Massachusetts Neurosciences Lifetime Achievement Award in 2019. He has published over 100 papers or chapters in books, journals, and conference and workshop proceedings. He is co-author with Sutton of the book Reinforcement Learning: An Introduction, published by the MIT Press in 1998, with a second edition published in 2018, which together have received nearly 50,000 citations and are regarded as foundational for the field of reinforcement learning. So I urge you to go ahead and purchase Andy's book. Well, Andy, how did you get into this field to begin with?
Thanks, David, for that introduction and the plug for our book. Great. So how did I get into it? Well, as you read, I was an undergraduate at the University of Michigan, majoring in mathematics, and I stumbled upon McCullough and Pitts' article. It may have been because I had also, by accident, found Michael Arbib's little book, Brains, Machines, and Mathematics, and that may have referred me to McCullough and Pitts. And I was really quite delighted to see these topics brought together because I was trying to decide what to do. And the possibility of doing all of these things was extremely appealing. Mainly, I could defer my decision until later. But you know, at that point, I started reading what I could about cybernetics, um, and what little there was about neural networks at that time. And I applied to the graduate program at Michigan, which was a very unique program, as you read. Um, it was really, and I joined a research group that focused on cellular automata, um, genetic algorithms. One of the principal investigators was John Holland, well known for genetic algorithms. Arthur Burks was another principal investigator, and he was one of the designers of ENIAC, the first general purpose electronic computer. And also Bernard Ziegler, uh, who was studying the modeling. He was modeling the modeling process. And Bernie became my chair of my PhD committee. And I pursued some of his ideas in the context of cellular automata. So I think, one of the things that attracted me to both cellular automata and to genetic algorithms was the idea that by providing very little amount of specification, the behavior of such systems could be very, very complicated. And I was enthralled by that generative process, more interested in that than what the final outcome would be. So, so let's see, what did I do next? I became a postdoc at the University of Massachusetts. And I spent 5 years as a postdoc, which were wonderful years. I had no teaching responsibilities. The grant or the project was very open-ended, and it allowed me, and along with Rich Sutton, who joined as a graduate student shortly into that project, it allowed us to do a wide-ranging exploration to see if Clough's idea of a hedonistic neuron was worth pursuing. And in the process, we uncovered, we learned a great deal, and we really, we were very excited to find that there was a gap really in research in terms of studying learning. We felt that in computer science and artificial intelligence, the idea of reinforcement learning was really not well studied. And so it was very exciting to delve into that. So I think that's answers that question. I could go on, but I'm I could.
Well, let me say yes. How about going on now and into other activities in particular? What do you believe are your most significant accomplishments?
Well, so I think above all was the recognition that reinforcement learning had not been thoroughly investigated in artificial intelligence, and and that was surprising to us because, of course, it's a very common sense idea, old idea, but the field had mostly studied supervised learning, which is very interesting in itself. But it to us it left out some important things, and so I think uncovering that and publicizing it was an important accomplishment. After that, I think I worked hard to connect these ideas to other disciplines. And I think, with the help of a lot of other people, we really created a scientific background for studying this, referring to dynamic programming and stochastic control and other things like that. So I've always tried to build these connections between between disciplines that normally didn't communicate with one another. And then finally, I think one of my biggest accomplishments was directing a collection of bright, wonderful students over the years, who have gone on to really do really astounding things. And without those students, I don't think the field of reinforcement learning would be anywhere near what it has become now. So I owe a huge amount to my students. Uh, and since I retired, I miss them tremendously, but we are still in touch.
Is any of your collaborators or students you'd like to mention further?
Well, Rich Sutton was my first student and my first PhD student, and he and I really worked alone for quite a few years in the early 80s. This project started in 1977, which was significantly before neural networks sort of came out of the woodwork again. And Rich and I, we were really quite, we felt like revolutionaries in a sense, because nobody was really studying this at the time. Certainly nobody was studying reinforcement learning, at least from a computational point of view. But my other students, Chuck Anderson, joined as a second student, and along the way, many others whose names are well known now in the field. So it was a very gratifying experience. Oh,
Nuts.
I hear your phone.
Yes, so we will now pause.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So my wonderful students, I have to acknowledge them for, really my style of advising graduate students was I was really interested in their ideas. I didn't impress my own ideas upon them, but I steered them, but really encouraged their development of their own ideas, and that I think is yielded great students who've made great contributions since then. So not sure it's always possible to do that, but the kind of grants, the kind of support I had allowed quite a bit of flexibility in terms of what we had to deliver. So it worked out very well.
Do you remember some of the early days of the field, of the professional societies?
Well, early days, yeah. So it's very interesting. I mean, we started this project in 1977, and you'll notice that our first publications were in journals, not in conference proceedings, because there weren't any conferences that focused on this kind of work. Uh, the AI field was not it did not really accept neural network sort of work in those days. It was considered to be proven useless and so on. In fact, I had an early paper rejected from an AI venue. I forget exactly what it was, but it was criticized for citing perceptron work, which was 10 years old at that time. And the AI field felt that nothing of that era was worth mentioning. So it was very different than it is now, obviously, but we were able to publish in journals, mostly biological cybernetics and IEEE system managed cybernetics, um, and we we were not pressured, as many students are now, to produce short papers every year for conferences. We were, we really worked for 2 or 3 years before we had what we felt was publishable. And then we'd write a paper and submit it to a journal. There were no annual neural network meetings in those days. So I think, that was very different than it is now. And it worked to our advantage, actually, because the journal papers became recognized eventually. And we weren't publishing least publishable units, as some people have said. And it was very exciting because we felt a bit revolutionary. Nobody else that we knew of was really studying this, and then neural networks became a big thing again in the 80s. I think with Romelhart McClellan's book, PDP books, and it was this huge revival of neural networks, and it was quite surprising. Actually, there was a cognitive science meeting in Amherst at my university let's see, I have a note here. It was in 1986, and I organized a panel discussion on artificial neural networks and neuroscience, if I correctly remember that. And I was blown away by the crowd that showed up. It was a huge auditorium, was filled with people. It was astounding. I was not prepared for that, but it was an interesting panel discussion, and it was this very fast resurgence of interest in neural networks. But before that, we were sort of in the wilderness, but excited about it because we felt we were onto something, and that was we weren't under pressure, and we were able to freely look at literature going way back, actually. In fact, the first neural network that was simulated on a digital computer was actually was Farley and Clark, 1954, and it was trained by reinforcement learning. And it was a recurrent neural network, and not much was demanded of it, but it was trained not by backprop, which didn't come out until later, but by broadcasting a reinforcement signal to all the units in the network. And that's something I'm interested in now. The problem with it is extremely slow compared to backprop. And so one of the things I'm interested in is looking at methods to speed it up, reduce the variance in estimating the reward signal. So that's one area that I'm currently interested in. But those days, very exciting, completely different from what's going on now. It was great. And I didn't have responsibilities. I didn't have teaching responsibilities. I think I did a little teaching as a postdoc, but it wasn't, I was not on a tenure track. I did join the faculty in '82, but that was 5 years of being a postdoc, which was maybe, all the interesting things I've ever done were done in that 5-year period. So it was a luxury. Not everyone can do that these days, unfortunately.
Is there anything else you'd like to say about your present interests?
Well, gee, I'm retired, right? So my main interest is being retired. so And I can't follow the literature the way I used to. But I'm interested in some things. I'm very interested in the relationship between learning and evolution, and that derives from some work we did some years ago, where we looked at evolving reward signals for reinforcement learning system. I mean, the reward system in our brains is a highly evolved mechanism, and you know, and it works with the reinforcement learning process through evolution. And so I really think that the connection between learning and evolution is an area that there's still some things to learn about that. So what else? Oh, there are other things, but that's yeah. I'm as I said, I'm not working at the pitch that I used to, and it's hard to keep up. The volume of work has increased so massively that it's impossible to stay abreast. And even for young people in the field, I really have compassion for them being subjected to the onslaught of literature from all sorts of different sources. It's very exciting, but it's hard to. In the old days, our lab we were at the top. We knew what was going on everywhere, and nowadays it's impossible. It's impossible to do that. So times are tougher.
I wonder if you have any feelings about what people are doing now. What are people doing right or doing wrong with AI?
Yeah, well, so the deep learning is very exciting. It's done some amazing things, surprising, some great applications, um, and it's a technology that really works. Um, but I think it's a mistake to regard AI as being nothing but deep learning, nothing but deep neural networks. And I think many people would agree with me. It's a great advance in a technology, but artificial intelligence needs more than that. Um, and I think certainly groups are working on other things, but certainly in the popular press, AI is equated with deep neural networks, and I think that's a mistake. So if the goal is general artificial intelligence, I think it has to encompass much more, including emotion and reasoning. Maybe two polar ends of intelligence, and there are groups working on those connections, but it's overshadowed by the progress made using deep neural networks. So that's kind of my perspective on what's going on now. I guess if I were starting out, I would try to find a subject that nobody else was studying. And, as advice to young people starting out, I heard a talk by Alan Newell, cognitive psychologist, computer scientist, one of the founders of AI, who characterized different research styles of researchers, and one style he called them nomads. And nomadic researchers go to the currently top field, where the money is, where the excitement is, And then when that aura fades, they'll move on to the next hot thing, and so on. And their careers are spent moving from hot topic to hot topic. And I think in my case, I was the opposite of that. And I think that's true of Rich Sutton also. We were really interested in these particular issues and basically spent our whole careers on the same subject, which fortunately, has yielded some contributions. But I would advise young people to, follow what they passionately are interested in, ignoring to the extent that they can. Certainly, there are practical considerations that have to be met, like where your support is coming from and so on, what jobs are available. But I think hopping from hot topic to hot topic is, I think that's not a particularly desirable way to go. Recognizing that it's necessary at some points, but so that would be my advice to researchers just starting out. To say in my case, I was lucky. I was lucky to be able to do that, and for so many years, I was lucky that what I was interested in turned out to be something that really became a hot topic itself, and and that's I think that's I was very fortunate that that has happened, and I'm fortunate to be retired now too, because I cannot keep up with what's going on now. There's so many interesting, great things being done by so many people. The field has just expanded immensely, and it's hard. Uh, I have stacks of papers that I'd love to read, but really hard to get through them. So yeah, I was lucky. I was lucky, and I'm delighted that this field of reinforcement learning has generated interest, uh, through the activities of my students and their students. And I think I have some great grand students now, apparently. That's been delightful to see. I mean, one of the things that's interesting to me, though, still is the safety and of applications. Uh, there's a lot of interest in the fact that machine learning systems can be biased in lots of ways, and if you're thinking about deploying the results of a learning system in the real world, you have to be concerned about safety, and you need to develop methods for mitigating what can happen. And I think that's extremely important. In fact, two of my former students are now professors at UMass, Phil Thomas and Bruno Castro da Silva, who now run the lab that I used to run. And one of their main interests is in the safety of these kinds of algorithms. Not just reinforcement learning algorithms, but machine learning algorithms in general. So there's it's great that this subject is now of concern to quite a few people around the world. It's a really critical thing to focus on. Yes, well, I could go on, but
is there anything else which you would like to mention?
Oh my. Well, this connection between learning and evolution is very interesting to me, because if you think of the part of learning that's reinforcement learning, it's a kind of optimization process. The goal is not to optimize something, but really to improve to improve performance over time with respect to some measure, some reward signal. And evolution is very similar, of course, with regard to evolutionary fitness, and they're coupled. And of course, this is well recognized, but what interests me is the fact that the evolutionary process actually adjusts the objective function of the learning process. And so there's an embedded optimization system, but where the high level is actually modifying the objective function of the lower level. And to me, I'm very interested mathematically how to think about that. And I think it's a key feature of how intelligence has evolved. So that you know, I still think about that. So let's see. Well, I'm impressed by work that people are doing. I can't keep up with it, but and it's wonderful to see applications that actually have major implications. For example, protein folding that DeepMind and another group have recently done is a real advance for science, and to me that's really very exciting. So yes, and it's great to have played a little part in all of this, but
well, I think that you have benefited from more than just good luck and have been able to play a major role. So I much enjoyed talking with you, and good luck with your future efforts.
Well, thank you very much, David. I appreciate the opportunity, and I wish INNS great things for the future. And it's been a pleasure talking to you, and I guess to everybody. We'll see.
Thank you.